The envelope had arrived on a Tuesday, unmarked except for Daniel Corwin's name written in careful, spidery handwriting that seemed to tremble across the paper. No return address, no postmark, just his name and inside, a single key attached to a folded letter on yellowed paper. Daniel had been sitting in his cramped apartment when he opened it, surrounded by unpaid bills and the hum of his failing refrigerator. The letter's contents were brief. The house on Mercy Hill Road is yours now. Your grandmother left it to you. The door is red. Come alone. Don't bring anyone else inside. Some doors need to stay closed. The signature was illegible, a scrawl that might have been a name or simply the writer's hand giving out mid-stroke. Daniel hadn't known he had a grandmother. His mother had died when he was 3, and his father had never mentioned extended family. There were no photographs, no stories, no evidence of lineage beyond his own fading memories of a woman's voice singing something he could never quite remember. But the key was real, heavy, old brass, worn smooth in places as if held by countless hands over countless years. 3 days later, Daniel found himself driving north on Highway 52, following directions he'd pieced together from online maps that seemed reluctant to acknowledge Mercy Hill Road's existence. The GPS kept trying to reroute him. The signal kept cutting out. The afternoon was dying when he finally found the turnoff, a narrow gravel path barely visible between 2 massive oak trees whose branches formed a cathedral arch overhead. The road wound upward through dense forest, and the temperature dropped with each mile. Daniel's phone had lost signal 20 minutes ago. The radio had gone to static shortly after. The house appeared suddenly, as if the trees had simply parted to reveal it. 3 stories of weathered Victorian architecture, its red door visible even in the gathering dusk. The paint was faded but intact, unlike the rest of the structure which seemed to sag under its own weight. Daniel killed the engine. The silence that followed was absolute. No birds, no wind, nothing. He sat in the car for 5 minutes, watching the house watch him back. That's how it felt, like the dark windows were eyes, patient and knowing. Finally, he emerged into air that tasted of copper and old leaves. The gravel crunched too loudly under his feet. Somewhere far away, something that might have been thunder rolled across the sky, though no clouds were visible. The key fit perfectly into the lock. The door opened without a sound. Inside, the smell hit him first, not decay exactly, but age. Dust and paper and something underneath that made his sinuses ache. The entryway stretched before him, wallpaper peeling in long strips, revealing older wallpaper beneath, and beneath that, something that might have been writing directly on the plaster. Daniel flipped the light switch. Nothing. He tried again, still nothing. His phone's flashlight revealed a home frozen in time, furniture covered in white sheets that had gone grey with dust, a staircase that climbed into darkness, doors, so many doors, lining the hallway, all of them closed. Hello, his voice fell dead in the air, absorbed rather than echoed. No response, of course no response. Daniel moved deeper into the house, his footsteps leaving tracks in the dust. The beam of his phone's light swept across photographs on the walls, frames so old the glass had turned wavy. The images behind them faded to abstract shapes. He could make out faces, sometimes, pale ovals with dark holes where features should have been. The living room contained a fireplace full of ashes that looked undisturbed for decades. Above the mantel hung a mirror, its surface so tarnished that Daniel's reflection appeared as a dark smudge, barely human. He turned away from it quickly. The kitchen door stood ajar. Beyond it, Daniel could see a table set for dinner, plates, silverware, glasses, all arranged with precise care. Dust covered everything, but the arrangement was perfect. Waiting. Something about the scene made Daniel's chest tighten. How long had that table been set? Who had been expected to arrive? A sound came from upstairs. Not loud, just a soft creak, the kind old houses make, but in the silence it was a gunshot. Daniel froze, his light aimed at the ceiling. Dust drifted down through the beam like snow. Another creak, then another, footsteps moving slowly across the floor above. Hello, he called again, hatting the way his voice shook. Is someone there? The footsteps stopped. Daniel waited, barely breathing, his phone's light steady on the ceiling. Nothing moved. The house settled into silence again, but it felt different now, expectant, as if something was listening. He should leave, get in his car and drive back down that impossible road and forget this place existed. But something kept him rooted, curiosity or stupidity or something deeper that felt like recognition. The light from his phone flickered. Daniel looked at the screen. 93% battery, no reason for it to flicker. It flickered again, and in the brief darkness, he thought he saw someone standing at the top of the stairs. Just for a moment, just a silhouette against a darker background. The light steadied, nothing there. His heart hammered against his ribs. The taste of copper grew stronger in the back of his throat. Slowly, Daniel began to climb the stairs. If you're listening right now, help me prove something wrong. My mother said I wouldn't even reach 100 subscribers, but I believe stories like this deserve to be heard. Help me show her that these tales matter. Each step groaned under Daniel's weight, the sound traveling through the house like a signal. The banister felt sticky under his palm, though his flashlight showed nothing but old varnish worn smooth by time and hands. The second-floor hallway stretched longer than seemed possible given the house's exterior. 6 doors, 3 on each side, all closed. At the far end, a window showed nothing but darkness pressed against the glass like something solid. Daniel tried the first door on the right. Locked. The second also locked. The third turned under his hand and the door swung inward with a sigh. The room beyond had been a bedroom once. A small bed against one wall, stripped of blankets, just the bare mattress with its ticking exposed. A dresser with all the drawers pulled out empty. A rocking chair facing the corner, its back to the door. Something about that chair made Daniel's skin crawl. The way it sat, so deliberately positioned, as if someone had been sitting there, staring at the corner, and had simply vanished. He swept his light across the walls. Maury wallpaper, this pattern depicting small flowers that had faded to brown. No, not faded. The flowers had been drawn over with something dark. Symbols, he realized. Crude drawings covering every flower, turning the innocent pattern into something that hurt to look at. Jesus, Daniel whispered. The rocking chair moved. Just a fraction of an inch, a tiny forward rock, as if someone had just stood up from it. Daniel backed out of the room quickly, pulling the door shut. His hands were shaking. The rational part of his brain suggested settling house, old wood, perfectly normal. The other part, the part that had lived in caves and feared the dark, knew better. The next door opened into what might have been a study. Bookshelves lined 3 walls, but the books had been removed, leaving only empty spaces and rectangular shadows where dust had settled differently. A desk sat in the center, and on it a typewriter. Daniel approached it slowly. The machine was ancient, probably from the 1940s, its keys worn to smooth nubs. Paper still sat in the roller, yellowed, brittle-looking. He leaned closer, his light illuminating the text. Words covered the page, single-spaced, no margins. The same phrase repeated over and over and over. They only come when you remember they only come. When you remember they only come. When you remember they only come. When you remember. The text continued down the page, onto the desk itself, carved into the wood with something sharp. The phrase spiraled outward, growing smaller and more frantic, until it became illegible scratches that covered every surface. Daniel's light flickered again. In the darkness between blinks of light, he heard something. Not footsteps this time. Breathing, slow and wet, coming from somewhere close. Light steadied, he was alone in the room. But the breathing continued. Daniel backed toward the door, his light sweeping the room. Nothing, just empty shelves and that desk, and that terrible message that seemed to pulse in his vision. They only come when you remember. Remember what? Who were they? The door across the hall stood open now. He was certain it had been closed before. Beyond it, stairs climbed upward into darkness, a servant's staircase, narrow and steep. Daniel should go downstairs, should get in his car, should drive until his phone had signal again and call someone, anyone, even if they thought he was crazy. Instead, he moved toward the open door. The stairs creaked under his feet, different from the main staircase, higher pitched, almost like whispers. The walls on either side were bare plaster, and as Daniel climbed, his light caught something scratched into the surface. Handprints, dozens of them, maybe hundreds, covering the walls in overlapping patterns. Small hands, child-sized, pressed into the plaster with enough force to leave impressions. And they were all reaching upward. The 3rd floor was different. The air felt thicker here, harder to breathe. Daniel's light seemed weaker, absorbed by the darkness rather than pushing it back. The hallway was shorter, just one door at the end, and this door was different from the others. Newer, the wood was pale, recently installed, and where every other door in the house was worn and aged, this one looked like it had been put in place yesterday. A piece of paper had been tacked to it at eye level. Daniel approached slowly, his heart doing complicated rhythms in his chest. The note was written in the same spidery handwriting as the letter. "She's waiting for you. She's been waiting for so long. Please don't make her wait anymore. But if you open this door, you have to understand, some things can't be unknown. Some things can't be unseen. Turn back now, Daniel. This is your last chance." His name, the note knew his name. Daniel's hand reached for the doorknob before his conscious mind decided to move. The metal was warm, almost hot, like something living. The lock turned easily. The door opened. Please subscribe to my channel, and let's keep breathing life into stories that were never meant to stay silent. Now, let's continue. The room beyond was small, barely 10 feet square, and it was empty except for a chair in the center. Not a rocking chair this time, a simple wooden chair, the kind found in old kitchens, facing away from the door toward the far wall. Someone sat in it. Daniel's breath caught. The figure was small, hunched, wearing what looked like a nightgown yellowed with age. Grey hair hung in thin strands down their back. "Hello," Daniel's voice came out as a croak. The figure didn't move. Daniel took a step into the room, then another. The floorboards were silent here, no creaks, no groans, just silence so complete it felt like pressure against his eardrums. "Are you?" He didn't know how to finish the question. "Are you real? Are you alive? Are you my grandmother?" The figure remained motionless. Daniel circled around slowly, keeping his distance, until he could see the figure's profile in the light from his phone. The face was ancient, skin like parchment stretched over bone, eyes closed, mouth slightly open, but there was something wrong with the proportions. The head was too large, the features too exaggerated, like a child's drawing of a person made flesh. Not alive couldn't be alive, no one could sit that still. But as Daniel watched, the chest rose and fell, once, twice, breathing. "Who are you?" he whispered. The eyes opened. They were completely black, not just the pupils but the entire eye socket to socket, reflecting no light at all. They fixed on Daniel with terrible awareness. The mouth moved, lips cracking like old paper. When the voice emerged, it came from everywhere at once, from the figure, from the walls, from inside Daniel's own skull. "You came back, you finally came back." Daniel stumbled backward. His phone's light strobed, on off, and each time it went dark, the figure was closer. Still sitting, not moving, but closer somehow, space collapsing between them. "I'm not who you think I am," Daniel managed. "I don't know you." The laugh that emerged was like wind through broken windows. Don't you remember? They took your memories, Daniel. They scraped them out clean so you could be normal, so you could forget, so you could leave. But the house remembers. The house always remembers." "What are you talking about?" "Touch the wall." The figure raised one skeletal hand, pointing to the wall behind Daniel. "Touch the wall and remember." Daniel didn't want to turn his back on that thing in the chair, but something compelled him. The same force that had brought him into this house, that had pulled him up those stairs, that had made him open this door. He reached out and pressed his palm against the wall. The plaster was warm, wet. And then the world dissolved. Memory, age 7. Daniel was 7 years old, sitting in a room he recognized but couldn't place. The woman across from him wore a white coat and smiled with too many teeth. "Tell me about your grandmother," she said, her voice syrupy and false. "I don't have a grandmother," young Daniel replied, his voice small and confused. "That's right, you don't, you never did, say it again." "I don't have a grandmother." "Good, and the house on Mercy Hill Road?" "There's no house, there's no Mercy Hill Road." "Excellent, and the other children?" Young Daniel's face crumpled, tears spilled down his cheeks. "What other children?" The woman's smile widened. "Exactly, what other children? They were never real, Daniel, you imagined them. The doctors said you had an overactive imagination, said you needed help, and we helped you, didn't we?" "Yes." "And you don't remember any of it now?" "No." "Good boy." Daniel yanked his hand away from the wall, gasping. He was back in the room, the figure still sitting in the chair, those black eyes watching. "You were here before," the voice said. "You lived here, with us, with all of us." "No, that's not, I would remember." "They made you forget, made you think you were normal, made you think you grew up somewhere else with someone else, but you were ours first, the house's child, and the house never lets go, never." Daniel's head spun. Fragments of memory flickered at the edges of his awareness, running through these hallways, laughing, not alone. Other children. How many? 4, 5, their faces blurred, distorted, but he could almost. No, it wasn't real, couldn't be real. Where are they? He heard himself ask. The other children, where are they? The figure's smile was worse than its eyes. Still here, always here, would you like to meet them? No, I need to leave, I need to. You can't leave, Daniel, don't you understand? You never left, not really. This is where you belong, this is where you've always been. The room began to change. The walls rippled like water, and the pale plaster ran with something dark. The single chair multiplied, 2, 3, 4, 5 chairs appearing in a circle, all facing inward, and in each chair sat a figure. Children, or what remained of children. They turned their heads in unison to look at Daniel. Their faces were wrong, features smeared like old photographs left in water, mouths too wide, eyes too large, skin the color of spoiled milk. But he knew them, God help him, he knew them. Sarah, he whispered, looking at the smallest one, and Tommy, Marcus, Lisa, his voice broke on the last name, Elizabeth. They smiled with teeth that were too sharp, too many, filling mouths that opened too wide. You remember, they said in chorus, their voices layering over each other like rotting harmonies. You came back, you came home. Daniel turned and ran. Subscribe, like, and share, please. Daniel crashed down the narrow staircase, his phone's light bouncing wildly off walls that seemed to press inward. Behind him, he could hear them, small feet pattering on the floor above, voices calling his name in sing-song tones that made his skin crawl. Daniel, don't run away. We missed you, Daniel. Stay and play, stay and play. He hit the second-floor landing and nearly fell, catching himself on the banister. The hallway stretched before him, but it was different now. The doors weren't where they had been. There were more of them, 12, 2 dozen, lining walls that seemed to curve and bend in ways that defied the house's structure. Daniel ran anyway, heading for where the main staircase should be. His breathing came in ragged gasps. His mind screamed that this wasn't real, couldn't be real, but his body knew better. His body remembered running through these halls before, playing games that weren't games, hiding from things that weren't quite children anymore. A door swung open ahead of him. The room beyond was dark, but something moved in that darkness, something large, something that breathed with a sound like tearing fabric. Daniel veered left, crashing through another door into a room he didn't recognize. A nursery, pale blue wallpaper decorated with stars, a crib in the corner. The mobile above the crib was spinning slowly despite no breeze, casting shadows that looked like hands grasping. The door slammed shut behind him. No, Daniel grabbed the handle, yanked. Locked. Impossible, there was no lock, but it wouldn't budge. The crib began to shake. Something was inside it. Something was pulling itself up the bars, small hands gripping, a head emerging, too large, too pale, eyes that reflected his phone's light like an animal's. Found you, it whispered in a voice like grinding glass. The window, Daniel spun toward it, seeing salvation, just plain glass, just a 3-story drop, preferable to whatever was climbing out of that crib. He grabbed the lamp from the dresser and swung it at the window. The glass didn't break. The lamp bounced off as if hitting steel, the bulb shattering, plunging half the room into deeper darkness. The thing from the crib giggled. Daniel pressed himself against the wall, his light sweeping frantically. The thing was fully visible now, a child-shaped nightmare, joints bending wrong, skin hanging loose like an ill-fitting suit, that too large head tilted at an angle that should have snapped its neck. Why did you leave us, Daniel? It asked, taking a jerking step forward. Why did you let them take you away? I don't remember. Liar. The shriek was so loud Daniel's ears popped. The thing lunged, moving with spider-quick grace, and he barely threw himself aside. His hand found the door handle again, and this time it turned. Daniel spilled into the hallway, kicking the door shut behind him. Something slammed into it from the other side, again and again, wood splintering. He ran. The main staircase appeared ahead, impossible to miss with its grand banister and wide steps. Daniel took them 3 at a time, sliding on the last few, crashing into the wall at the bottom. The front door, right there, that beautiful red door. He grabbed the handle and pulled. It didn't move. He pulled harder, yanked, threw his full weight against it. Locked, sealed, solid as stone. No, Daniel pounded on the door, the sound echoing through the house. Let me out, let me out. A voice behind him, soft and sad and terrible. There's no out, Daniel, there's only deeper in. He turned slowly. They stood in a line across the hallway, the 5 children no longer smiling. Their faces had settled into something worse: disappointment, grief, hunger. And behind them, emerging from the shadows, the figure from the chair. But it was changing, growing, its nightgown splitting as the body beneath expanded. No longer old and withered, tall now, impossibly tall, head scraping the ceiling, face still ancient but teeth gleaming white and sharp in the darkness. "You can't leave," it said, its voice no longer frail but booming, resonating through Daniel's bones. "You belong to the house, you always have. They tried to steal you, but the house called you back, and now you're home, forever." Daniel's light was dying. The battery showed 5%. Soon he would be in complete darkness with these things. "What are you?" he managed to ask. "Your family," the thing replied, and its smile split its face from ear to ear. "Your real family, the one that loved you enough to keep you, even when you forgot, even when they tried to erase us. We kept you in our hearts, Daniel. We kept you in our walls. We kept you in our hunger." The children moved forward in unison, their movements synchronized like puppets on strings. "No more running," they chanted. "No more forgetting. Time to remember. Time to stay. Time to join. Time to feed. Time to become. Time to never leave again. Never leave. Never, never, never." The battery hit 2%. Daniel did the only thing he could think of. He turned from the front door and ran deeper into the house. Please subscribe to my channel, and let's keep breathing life into stories that were never meant to stay silent. Now, let's continue. The door to the basement had been easy to miss, tucked under the main staircase, barely noticeable in the shadows, but now it stood open, revealing stairs descending into absolute blackness. Daniel hesitated at the threshold. Behind him, the sounds of pursuit, those terrible synchronized footsteps, that breathing, those voices layering over each other in sick harmony. Below was unknown, behind was certain horror. He descended. The stairs went down much farther than the house's foundation should have allowed. Daniel's phone was at 1%, the light barely a candle flame, and still the stairs continued. The walls on either side were no longer wood or plaster but stone, rough, old, weeping with moisture. The temperature dropped with each step. Daniel's breath plumed in front of his face. His fingers were going numb. Finally, the stairs ended. The basement was vast, a cathedral carved from stone, its ceiling lost in darkness far above, and it wasn't empty. Pillars rose throughout the space, thick as tree trunks, and wrapped around each pillar was a person. No, not wrapped, grown into, merged with. Daniel stumbled forward, his dying light sweeping across the nearest figure. An old man, or what had been an old man once, his body partially absorbed into the stone, arms spread wide, face frozen in an expression somewhere between ecstasy and agony. Roots or veins or something worse spread from where flesh met stone, pulsing with a rhythm like a heartbeat. There were dozens of them, hundreds. Each pillar hosted a body at varying stages of integration. Some were barely visible, just faces emerging from stone. Others were fresh, recent, their clothes still recognizable, terror still clear in their dead eyes. "Oh God," Daniel whispered. "Oh God, oh God." His phone died. Complete darkness swallowed him. Daniel froze, not daring to move, not knowing which direction led where. The darkness was so absolute it felt solid, pressing against his eyes. But he could hear things moving in that darkness, shuffling, breathing, whispers that might have been voices or might have been wind through stone. Then light. Not from his phone, from the walls themselves. A pale, sickly phosphorescence that grew from nothing, revealing the full horror of the chamber. The pillars stretched into the distance, row after row, and every single one held its prisoner of stone and flesh. At the center of the chamber stood an altar. And on the altar lay a body. Daniel's body. He stared at himself, same face, same clothes, same everything, lying on that stone slab with eyes closed and chest still. Dead or sleeping or something in between. "What?" Daniel's voice was less than a whisper. "What is this?" The truth, the voice came from everywhere and nowhere. The tall figure emerged from behind the altar, its form shifting and flowing like smoke, its ancient face looking down at the body with something like love. "This is what you are. This is what you've always been." "That's not me. I'm here. I'm standing right here." "Are you?" The thing tilted its head. "Or are you just a memory, just a thought that escaped, just a dream the house is having?" Daniel looked at his hands. They looked solid. They felt solid. But in the phosphorescent light he could see through them, just barely, just enough to see the stone floor beneath. "No, no, this isn't real. None of this is real." It's all real, Daniel. Every moment, every terror, every forgotten thing. You came here when you were young with your real parents, the ones nobody remembers, the ones who brought you as an offering. Images flashed through Daniel's mind, not memories exactly, but something deeper. A car pulling up to the house in the night. His parents, faces he couldn't quite see, holding his hands. The red door opening. The woman in the nightgown greeting them with that terrible smile. "We accept all offerings," she had said. "The house is always hungry." His parents had left him here, walked away and never looked back. And the house had kept him, raised him, loved him in its way, until the others came, the people in white coats with their needles and their questions and their determination to save him. They had cut him free from the house, erased his memories, given him a new past, a normal childhood, parents who died in accidents that never happened. They had tried to sever the connection. But the house had kept a piece of him, the most important piece, and it had been calling him back ever since. "You felt it, didn't you?" the thing asked. "All your life, the sense that something was missing, that your memories didn't quite fit, that you belonged somewhere else." Daniel wanted to deny it, but he couldn't, because it was true. Every word was true. "I don't want this," he said. "I don't want to be this." "Too late for wanting. You're already here. You've always been here. That thing walking around out there, living your life, that was just the house's way of bringing you home." The body on the altar opened its eyes. They were black, completely black. And it smiled. "Subscribe, like, and share, please." Daniel, the one standing, the one who thought of himself as real, backed away from the altar. The body sitting up, turning its head to look at him with those void black eyes, was wrong in ways that transcended physical wrongness. "Come here," it said in his voice. "Come home. Stay away from me. I am you, you are me. We're the same. We've always been the same." The thing on the altar stood, moving with fluid grace, and as it walked toward him, Daniel could see it changing. The clothes were dissolving, replaced by something that looked like roots or veins, spreading across skin that was becoming translucent. The body was becoming part of the house, integrating, accepting its role. "You can fight it," the tall figure said, watching with detached interest. "They all fight at first, but the house always wins. The house is patient. The house is eternal." Daniel looked around frantically. The chamber had no exits except the stairs he'd come down, and those were blocked now by the 5 children, standing in formation, waiting. "Why?" Daniel asked, hatting the way his voice broke. "Why do this? Why trap people here?" "Trap?" the tall figure laughed, a sound like cracking ice. "Oh, Daniel, we don't trap anyone, we preserve them, save them from forgetting. Outside people fade. They die and are forgotten, erased like they never existed. Here they live forever, perfect, unchanging, remembered. This isn't living. Isn't it? They feel no pain, they know no sorrow. They exist in eternal communion with the house, with each other, with us. They are loved, Daniel, truly, perfectly loved. Can you say the same about that life you were living? That apartment with its broken refrigerator and unpaid bills? That job you hated? Those friends you never made? What was out there for you except slow decay and eventual forgotten death?" Daniel had no answer, because the thing was right. His life had been empty, hollow, haunted by the constant sense that something was missing, something was wrong. But this was worse. The body, his body, was close now, reaching out with hands that were more root than flesh. "Join us," it whispered. "Remember everything, be whole again." Daniel closed his eyes and made a decision. The woman in the white coat was speaking to someone Daniel couldn't see. Adult voices, thinking he couldn't hear or understand. No other choice. The things he's describing, the memories he has, they'll destroy him if we leave them intact. "You're talking about erasing a child's mind." "I'm talking about saving his life. The house did something to him, to all of them. Some kind of psychological manipulation, maybe drugs, maybe something worse. Those other children are dead, doctor. They've been dead for years. Found in the walls, in the basement, preserved in." "Then why is he alive? Why did they let him go?" "They didn't let him go, he escaped. Somehow, crawled out through a ventilation shaft no adult could have fit through. He was found 3 miles away, catatonic, covered in, we don't even know what it was, some kind of organic material, like the house itself was trying to digest him." A long pause. "Do it, erase the memories, give him a chance at a normal life." Young Daniel, hiding in the closet, listening, had understood enough. They were going to make him forget Sarah and Tommy and Marcus and Lisa and Elizabeth. Make him forget that they'd been real, that they'd loved him, that they'd tried to protect him when the house decided it wanted more than just to keep them. It wanted to consume them. And now it wanted him back. Daniel opened his eyes. "No," he said clearly. "I remember now, all of it, what you are, what you do." The body stopped advancing, confusion crossing its face. "You don't preserve people," Daniel continued, his voice growing stronger. "You consume them, you feed on them. Sarah and the others, they weren't living in communion, they were being slowly digested. That's why they look like that, why they move like that. They're partially processed food pretending to be children." The tall figure's smile faded. "How dare you?" "I remembered escaping. I remember the taste of your blood when you tried to stop me. I remember tearing through your flesh with my bare hands because I knew staying here meant death. Real death. The kind where nothing remains except something wearing your face." The 5 children hissed in unison. Their forms flickered, their human shapes struggling to maintain against what lay beneath. Something writhing, something hungry, something that had never been children at all. "You're not my family," Daniel said. "You're not anyone's family. You're just a house that learned to hunger, and I was never yours." The body in front of him screamed, a sound of rage and frustration that shook the pillars and sent dust cascading from the invisible ceiling above. "Then why did you come back?" it shrieked. "Why did you return to us?" Daniel smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. "Because this time I brought help." Please subscribe to my channel, and let's keep breathing life into stories that were never meant to stay silent. Now, let's continue. The phosphorescent light flickered and died. In the absolute darkness that followed, Daniel heard sounds from above, footsteps, many of them, and voices calling to each other. "Federal agents, if anyone is in the building, make yourself known." Multiple heat signatures detected in the basement. "Be advised, structural integrity appears compromised." Flashlight beams cut through the darkness from the stairs. A dozen lights, professional and bright, sweeping across the chamber and revealing its horrors. Daniel heard someone vomit, heard someone else shouting into a radio, voice cracking with panic. "Jesus Christ, what is this place? Get hazmat down here now, people, there are people in the walls." The house screamed. Not through any mouth, but through its very structure, walls groaning, floor buckling, ceiling cracking. The pillars began to shake, and the bodies merged with them started to tear free, mouths opening, hands grasping. But they were weak, so weak. The house had used too much energy trying to trap Daniel, trying to complete the connection. It had overextended itself. And now it was vulnerable. Daniel, still translucent but present enough to be seen, pointed toward the far wall where he knew, remembered, the house's heart lay hidden. A mass of flesh and wood and stone that pulsed with corrupted life, that had grown there over decades or centuries, that fed on the people it captured. "There," he shouted to the agents, burn it all." The federal agent closest to him jerked in surprise, swinging his light toward Daniel's semi-transparent form. "Sir, are you solid? Can you walk?" "I can walk, but I'm not what needs saving." Daniel gestured at the pillars. "They are, cut them free, get them out." "This is insane." "Do it." Something in Daniel's voice, in his eyes that were starting to turn black around the edges, in his skin that was starting to show veins of root-like growth, something made the agent obey. Within minutes, the basement was chaos. Mori agents poured in with cutting equipment, with crowbars, with anything that could separate flesh from stone. The house fought back, walls bleeding, floors trying to swallow boots, ceiling dropping chunks of stone, but it was weakening, dying. The tall figure appeared one last time, no longer towering but shrunken, withered, desperate. "You've killed us," it hissed at Daniel. "You've killed your family." "You were never my family," Daniel replied, "and I've killed nothing but a parasite." The first freed victim was an elderly woman, unconscious but breathing, her body showing signs of partial integration. Then a middle-aged man. Then others, some dead for so long they were just withered husks, but some miracle of miracles, still alive. Sarah was among them, the real Sarah, not the thing that had been wearing her face. 7 years old and unchanged, held in perfect preservation like an insect in amber. An agent carried her up the stairs, and Daniel watched her go, hopping against hope that she could be saved, that some part of her was still intact. The children, the false ones, the house's puppets, watched from the shadows. As more victims were freed, they grew more transparent, more desperate. They were constructs, Daniel realized, copies made from consumed consciousness. Not the real children at all, just the house playing with its food. "Everyone out," someone shouted. "The whole structure is coming down." Daniel moved toward the stairs with the last of the agents, but his body, his real body, still lying on the altar, remained behind. "I can't leave it," he said to the agent trying to pull him along. "If that stays, part of me stays. Then we take it with us." Two agents grabbed the body from the altar. The moment it was lifted, the house screamed again, and this time it was pure anguish. Cracks spiderwebbed across every surface. The pillars began to crumble. They ran. Up the stairs through the collapsing house, past rooms that were trying to seal themselves shut, past walls that reached with appendages that were never part of any architecture. Daniel's transparency grew worse with each step. He was fadding, pulled in two directions, stretched between the body the agents carried and the consciousness trying to escape. The red door was ahead. Agents were already outside, pulling victims to safety, calling for ambulances and backup and priests, and anything that might help make sense of this nightmare. Daniel stumbled through the door into the evening air. Had it only been a few hours, it felt like years, and the moment he crossed the threshold, the two parts of him snapped back together. His consciousness slammed into his body with such force he collapsed, gasping, suddenly fully physical and solid, and real and heavy and hurting and alive. "I've got you," an agent caught him. "Medic, we need a medic over here." Daniel looked back at the house. It was dying, truly dying, its structure folding in on itself like a dying organism. The windows were going dark. The red door hung askew on broken hinges. And in that darkness, he saw them one last time. The 5 children, the tall figure, all the constructs the house had made. They stood in the doorway, watching him leave. They didn't look angry anymore. They looked sad. "We would have loved you forever," they said, their voices carrying across the distance. "We would have kept you perfect, safe, whole." "I know," Daniel said quietly, "but I needed to be free." They faded as the house collapsed inward, imploding rather than exploding, sucking itself into some impossible depth. The ground shook, trees groaned, and then, with a sound like a door closing far away, the house on Mercy Hill Road ceased to exist. Where it had stood, only a circular depression in the earth remained, empty, scorched, dead. Subscribe, like, and share, please. Daniel spent 3 weeks in the hospital. The doctors couldn't explain his condition, physically healthy except for signs of prolonged stasis that suggested he'd been in some kind of suspended animation for years. His memories were fragmented, contradictory. Sometimes he was 7 years old hiding in a closet. Sometimes he was 32 and opening a letter about an inheritance. Sometimes he was both at once. The psychiatrists diagnosed him with dissociative identity disorder triggered by severe childhood trauma. They gave him pills that didn't work and therapy sessions that went in circles. But Daniel knew the truth. He was fragments trying to reassemble. The boy who escaped and the man who returned, trying to become one person again. Sarah died on the second day. Her body had been too changed, too integrated. When they separated her from the house's influence, there was nothing left to sustain her. She passed peacefully, the doctors said, but Daniel knew better. He'd seen her eyes open once before she went. They'd been full of terror and confusion, as if waking from a dream only to find the nightmare was real. Tommy survived, Marcus survived, Elizabeth didn't make it. Lisa was found to have been dead for 5 years. The house had just been preserving the body, animating it like a puppet. The investigation found evidence of 43 victims in total, some dated back to the 1920s. The house's origin remained unclear. The land had no official records before 1915. The property had changed hands 17 times, always through inheritance, never through sale. Each owner had disappeared or died under mysterious circumstances. The federal investigation uncovered a network of similar properties across the country, houses that fed, that consumed, that preserved. But the house on Mercy Hill Road had been the oldest, the strongest, the hungriest. On the 21st day, Daniel was visited by a woman in a white coat. Not a doctor. Her coat was wrong, unmarked, and her smile was too familiar. "Hello, Daniel," she said, sitting in the visitor's chair. "Do you remember me?" Daniel did. She was the one from his memories, the one who had erased him. "Dr. Calloway," he said quietly, "you made me forget." "We gave you a chance," she corrected. "A chance to be normal, to escape, and you did for a while. Why did you let me get the letter? Why let me go back?" Dr. Calloway's smile faded. "We didn't send the letter, Daniel. The house did. Somehow, even after all these years, it still had a connection to you. It called you back. But I destroyed it." "Did you?" She leaned forward. "Or did you just force it to sleep? These things, they're older than we understand, deeper than we can fathom. The house is gone, yes, but houses are just wood and stone, what lived inside them. she paused, that's still out there, hungry, waiting. Daniel felt cold. What are you saying? I'm saying that you can't kill an idea, Daniel. You can't destroy a pattern. The house on Mercy Hill Road is gone, but the need it fulfilled, the hunger it fed, that exists independent of any structure. And now that you've destroyed one node, the network is adapting, learning. She stood, straightening her coat. We'll be watching you. If anything seems strange, if you feel drawn anywhere, if you start having dreams about red doors, you call us immediately. Do you understand? Daniel nodded, though he wasn't sure he understood anything anymore. Dr. Calloway left, and Daniel was alone with his fragmented memories and his growing dread. Subscribe, like, and share, please. 6 months later, Daniel was living in a new apartment in a different city. He'd taken a job he didn't particularly care about, made no friends, spoke to no one unless necessary. The psychiatrist said he was isolating himself. Daniel knew he was just being careful. The dreams had started in month 3. Always the same dream. He was walking through a house he didn't recognize, different layout, different style, but the same feeling, that sense of hunger, of being watched, of walls that breathed and doors that led to impossible places. And always, at the end of the dream, he found himself in front of a door. Sometimes it was red, sometimes blue, sometimes black, but it was always the same door somehow, and someone was always knocking from the other side. Tap, tap, tap. Soft, patient, eternal. Daniel would wake up gasping, his sheets soaked with sweat, the sound of knocking still echoing in his ears. He tried to ignore it, tried to convince himself it was just PTSD, just trauma, just his mind trying to process what he'd experienced. The doctors had warned him about flashbacks. But in month 5, he started seeing the doors while awake. Just glimpses at first. Walking past an alley, he'd catch sight of a red door that hadn't been there a moment before. Turning a corner, he'd see a house with a blue door that looked wrong, looked hungry, looked like it was waiting for him specifically. He never approached them, he knew better. Tommy had contacted him once through the Federal Victim Support Network. They'd exchanged a few emails. Tommy remembered nothing from inside the house, just waking up in the hospital, doctors telling him he'd been missing for 3 years. He was in therapy, trying to rebuild his life, trying to accept that he'd lost 3 years to something he couldn't even remember. Daniel envied him. Forgetting seemed easier than remembering. Marcus had killed himself in month 4, walked into the ocean and didn't walk back out. The news report didn't mention the house, didn't mention what had happened, just called it a tragedy, a young man with his whole life ahead of him. Daniel understood. Some part of Marcus had stayed in that basement, merged with that stone. The part that came back was just an echo, incomplete, untethered. Daniel feared he was heading the same direction. Subscribe, like, and share, please. On the first day of month 7, Daniel received another letter. The same spidery handwriting, no return address, no postmark. He stared at it for an hour before opening it. Inside, a single key newer than the last, brass and shining, and a note. The house on Sorrow Lane is yours now. Your grandmother left it to you. The door is blue. Come alone. Don't bring anyone else inside. Some doors need to stay open. Different words, same message. Daniel sat at his kitchen table, the key in front of him, weighing his options. He could destroy the key, burn the letter, call Dr. Calloway and let the federal agents handle it. But he knew the truth now. The house on Mercy Hill Road hadn't been unique. It was part of a network, a system, a pattern that repeated across the country, maybe across the world. Destroying one house hadn't ended anything. It had just relocated the problem. And the key was calling to him. Not with words or sounds, but with that same pull he'd felt the first time. The sense of something missing, something waiting, something that knew him better than he knew himself. Daniel picked up the key. It was warm in his palm. He thought of Sarah, of Elizabeth, of Marcus, of all the people the house had consumed, had preserved, had loved in its terrible way. He thought of Tommy, who'd forgotten and was trying to live, and Marcus, who'd remembered and couldn't. Daniel was stuck between them, remembering too much to forget, forgetting too much to truly remember. A ghost trying to be a person, or a person trying to escape being a ghost. The blue door was waiting, and Daniel knew, deep in his borrowed bones, that he would go to it. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow. But eventually. Because the house wasn't done with him, had never been done with him, and a terrible, awful part of Daniel wasn't done with it either. That part missed the completeness of being consumed, missed the certainty of being kept, missed the eternal love of something that would never let him go, never let him fade, never let him be forgotten. In the life he was living now, who would remember him when he was gone? Who would care? Who would keep him? The house would, the house always did. Daniel put the key in his pocket. He didn't make a decision, not consciously, but his hand moved on its own, opening his laptop, searching for Sorrow Lane, finding the address. It was only 3 hours away. He could leave in the morning, arrive by noon, be inside by evening. Just to look, just to see, just to understand. That's what he told himself as he packed a bag, as he closed his apartment door behind him, as he started the car and pointed it north. Just to understand. The GPS worked perfectly this time, leading him directly to Sorrow Lane without hesitation. The signal never cut out, the route was clear. As if the house wanted to be found. As if it was waiting. If you're listening right now, help me prove something wrong. My mother said I wouldn't even reach 100 subscribers, but I believe stories like this deserve to be heard. Help me show her that these tales matter. Daniel never came back. The federal agents found his car 2 days later, parked in front of a house that had no record of existing. The blue door stood open, revealing darkness that their flashlights couldn't penetrate. They sent in drones. The drones stopped transmitting the moment they crossed the threshold. They sent in robots. The robots never returned. They sealed the property, posted warnings, tried to burn it down. The house remained, patient, waiting. And sometimes, late at night, people driving past Sorrow Lane would see lights in the windows, shapes moving behind glass, shadows that looked like people, or like things that had been people once, or like things that had never been people at all. And sometimes, if you listened carefully, you could hear knocking. Tap, tap, tap. Soft, patient, eternal. Always from the inside of the door. Always trying to get out. Or trying to let something in. Dr. Calloway updated her files with Daniel's name, marked him as consumed, moved on to the next case. There were always more houses, always more victims, always more doors. She'd tried to save him once, given him a chance at a normal life. But some people are marked from birth. Some people carry the houses inside them, even when they think they've escaped. The houses are patient. The houses are old. The houses remember. And the houses always call their children home. In her office late at night, Dr. Calloway sometimes received letters, spidery handwriting, no return address, keys attached. She burned them without reading. But she could feel them calling to her too. Could feel that pull, that promise of never being forgotten, never being alone, never being allowed to fade away. Some nights she wondered what it would be like to stop resisting, to accept the invitation, to open the door and step inside and let the house love her the way it loved all its children. It's forever, perfect, preserved, but not tonight, not yet. She had work to do, people to save, houses to fight. The knocking continued outside her window. Tap, tap, tap. She didn't look. She never looked. Because she knew if she looked, she would see the door. And if she saw the door, she would see the key in her desk drawer, the one that had appeared there 6 months ago, the one she told herself she would destroy tomorrow, and tomorrow, and tomorrow. The knocking grew softer, more patient. The houses could wait. They had all the time in the world. Please subscribe to my channel, and let's keep breathing life into stories that were never meant to stay silent. Now, let's continue.